Sometimes in the world of beauty aesthetics, it's the wild, wild west. Mixed information, unsafe practices, non-ethical standards. There's a lot of misinformation. Well, there's a new sheriff in town, and she ain't having it. So if you're a fellow outlaw, and we know you are, saddle up, dust off those spurs, and let's ride off into the sunset, all the while being beautiful and educated. Y'all be safe out on the trail. This is the JKH Beauty Outlaw. And now your host, a seasoned aesthetic entrepreneur, registered nurse, and a licensed esthetician, Jerry Hurst.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again to the Beauty Outlaws podcast. I welcome you into my working med spa where I'm starting a new series today. I've titled Injector Spotlight, where I will be covering the stories and backgrounds of cosmetic doctors, registered nurses from across the United States who have been leaders in their aesthetic industry. You will gain insight into their vision and the future of what this industry has to hold. So listen closely while they share their knowledge and expertise with you in this rapidly growing industry that so many aspire to be in and very few stand out. Today, I have a standout. I'm privileged to introduce her to you right now. She's an individual that has mastered her craft and also has valuable lessons to teach us all. She is a premier nurse injector for 25 years, certified national trainer for 15 years, and she's local. Here in Orange County is where she practices, and I am honored to call her a friend. So I'm excited to welcome Suzanne Rogers. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
It was tough to get Suzanne here today. Not only is she super busy, I just went through her whole educational, a little bit of how long you've been in the industry. But to get her here to do this podcast was challenging in itself, but we added a little more challenge today because what happened, Suzanne, on your way here?
I got a flat tire, but it was only a mile out from here. So you guys came and picked me up, so I got a ride.
Perfect. I was so glad that you could make it. I'd like to start, though, because I announced who you are with your experience, but I'd like to know about how you started in this industry so many years ago. What brought you into nursing?
Well, I always wanted to be a nurse, and I didn't think I was smart enough. And so I got a degree in education, elementary education, and I substitute taught and had 3 kids. And then I decided I think I need to go to nursing school. So I went to nursing school with 3 kids. Small kids, and you know how. So wow. After going to nursing school, I actually got pregnant and had a 4th, and worked in the hospital for a couple of years, and decided I needed a job that I could work when my kids were in school and not do the shift work, because you know how hospital work is really hard. Mm-hmm. So I answered an ad. It's so funny that you are asking me this question, because back when I started, there wasn't very many people doing aesthetics. You know that, 25 years ago. And so I answered a laser ad in the newspaper, showed up to this office in kind of a funky little area in LA, kind of. And
kind of LA.
Let's just South
right.
LA.
Yeah.
Dominguez Hills, if anyone knows.
Oh, yes.
I don't want to offend
Dominguez Hills. No.
I answered this nurse at RN ad for laser. So I go in, and this guy who's very well in the industry, I'm not going to name names, but wanted me to be a laser nurse. And so he started training me, but soon into the training, I found out that and he wasn't a doctor, and what I was going to do was not legal. And so I thought, my gosh, my nursing license, I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt my nursing license. So I went and got a job at a legitimate place, starting doing laser hair removal, and did that for a few years. And I was like, oh, I don't like this at all. So I started learning to inject, and that was 25 years ago. And from there, it's been a pretty wild ride.
I'm like, I don't want to do it. She's definitely an outlaw. She's definitely an outlaw. So you mentioned laser hair removal and you didn't like that. That's work. I mean, it's a job, right?
Yeah.
One after the other. It can be physical.
That's very hard on your body, doing the same thing over and over. And it's just kind of boring. And when I started to learn how to do Botox, I thought, wow, this is kind of fun. And then when I learned to do fillers, actually I was scared to death because we didn't have trainings. We didn't have Hylenex. We didn't have trainings, and I did not know anatomy. And I hate to admit this, but that's how it was. And if you were an RN, anyone would hire you to inject anywhere because there wasn't very many nurses doing this at the time. So I really got in the industry that I didn't even really want to do. That's what's so crazy is people ask me how I got into this. I didn't want to do aesthetics. I just wanted a job that I could be home when my kids got home from school. And that's how I got into this industry. And so it just blew up from there. I started in a couple of med spas and then went to plastics. And that's where I've stayed most of my career, is working in plastic surgery, because I really like having the covering of a plastic surgeon. And I've worked for a lot of them.
So, which is great because you kind of have the insight to to what's good and what's bad. She has all the knowledge here at OC. So what was the first injectable? Were you in the collagen days or
a little bit of Cosmoplast, which you had to do a test for to make sure you weren't allergic to it. But I would say Restylane and Perlane, which is now Restylane Lift, were the first ones that I injected, and then Juvederm right after that one is what came along. So I was actually, that was back when we didn't have Dysport. We just had the 2 Restylane products and Juvederm.
And we had our 5 standard injection points for our neuromodulators, right? It was a very new world, right?
It was.
So did you, at that point in time, you stayed in with plastics. Have you always been in the Orange County area?
No. I'm actually, now I'm all over the place. I train, now I'm a trainer for Galderma, national trainer for Galderma, but in Colorado, I was actually working for a doctor there and injecting. Montana, I opened my own little place in Montana, Hamilton, kind of south of Missoula area. I'm working up in Chico. I'm kind of doing this new venture right now where I'm all over the place, but I'm training and injecting.
That's interesting because we have so much movement now in America, right? With nurses moving around, travel nurses. How does that work when you leave from California with your license and you work in Colorado or Montana? Do you have to get...
I have license in all those states. Actually, being a trainer for Galderma, they want us to have a license. If we're able to demonstrate anything, we need to have a license in that state. So I've had a Colorado nursing license probably for about 6 or 7 years, and then I've had a Montana license for a couple of years.
Is California easily transitioned in other states? Or do you have to take initial hours? How does that work? Or testing?
Actually, California's license is pretty much, I don't want to say reciprocal, but it is. I just pay the money. And they'll not like I have to take another test or anything. So.
I think that we have I think California and New York carry the more stringent education for nursing.
Exactly.
So it appears other states look at that as well. If they were educated there and they carry a California license, then we'll accept them there. That's fascinating.
Yes.
So you just pay the money and you can go work.
Get a license. The scary thing about Colorado, you being also an RN and an esthetician, is in Colorado, estheticians can inject all the things that we can inject as nurses and physicians. So that, when you talk about outlaw...
Which is exactly where we're going which is another reason why I wanted to bring you on. Is this is such a booming, you and I haven't seen it like this.
Never.
This is girls going and males going to nursing school to inject, to be a part of this aesthetic industry, which is super, they grew up on their Instagram and their Facebook watching, I don't know if they grew up on Facebook, but Instagram, and they watch this their whole life, and TikTok now, and they are ready to go out and do procedures.
It's actually, in my opinion, very scary when I meet a new injector because I train a lot, and I'll ask them how long they've been a nurse. I always go around the room and have everyone share, okay, how long you've been injecting, how, what did you do before you're, in the hospital? And it used to be they worked in ICU or they were labor and delivery or something like that. And now it's just what you said. They're coming straight out of nursing school and getting hired in aesthetics. And I always tell them, and this is just my opinion because I'm old school and I'm about safety, I tell them they need to go work in the hospital for a couple of years. And they're like, no, I don't want to. But there's so many things you learn in the hospital about protocol, being safe, learning to follow protocol. And
don't you think even assessment, dealing with an emergency, one that makes your heart goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Those things, right?
Yeah, just dealing with people in general, because this looks like a very glamorous job, and at times it is, but there's also a lot of really difficult issues that we need to deal with. Psychosocial, we deal with a lot of body dysmorphia, and someone that hasn't had to deal with patients doesn't understand the whole psychosocial part of injecting. It's not just putting a needle in a face and trying to get a good result or being safe. There's a lot of things that go into it.
What do you think about certification, having a certification? Kansas tried this. They're the Certified Aesthetic Nursing Association, right? Do you have that? Or because you worked for a plastic surgeon, have you done the testing? Or it doesn't matter if you do, I guess, or not.
There is a plastic surgery nurse certification that I should have done, but I haven't, and I signed up for it. I just haven't done it because I'm so busy working, but I need to do it. Sometimes we need to do those things. I think just to have those little letters behind our names sometimes make us look like we took that extra effort to take that test.
I do know about the cans, and what I find they're I feel like if I could speak to them, their missing link is that you have to be mentored only by a plastic surgeon or a dermatologist, which to me is such between a dermatologist and a plastic surgeon, that's a big different scopes, right? But there are fantastic cosmetic surgeons out there and cosmetic doctors that are fantastic at education and teaching. And I feel like they could really help a lot of these girls and mentor them and sign for that. Do you think an apprenticeship program would be necessary before an insurance company would insure a physician to hire that nurse, to know that she's capable?
In a world, I think that would be a really good idea to do an apprentice type of program. When you go get hired in a hospital, if you're a brand new labor and delivery nurse, what do you have, 8 to 10 8 weeks that someone has to follow you, and you go through all their training, and anything that's kind of higher risk, you have to do. It's not apprenticeship, but it's your training program. And I think it would be really helpful to follow someone, to see how to do. There's so much. There's so much. It's not just sticking. You brought up so many issues. All the things you've just said, I want to talk about the difference between cosmetic and plastic surgeons, because that's a whole separate issue. There's so many.
Well, go ahead and do that. Well, that I should bring up the difference because a lot of people don't know, and the people looking into this industry right now, maybe that is something that they could learn from that difference. I know what the difference is. Will you share it with us?
Well, the big difference is plastics. If you're a board-certified plastic surgeon, it takes 7 more years to get that certification. And so they have a very strong community of the plastic surgery board, and they do not look highly upon the cosmetic surgeons, because you can go get your cosmetic certification. I'm not going to say on a weekend, but it's pretty, it's not as intensive as the board-certified plastic surgeon. So there's a lot of, they don't like that, there's just this kind of little battle between the two. But it doesn't mean that your cosmetic surgeon isn't good and isn't educated, because there's a lot of very well-educated people. And because I've worked around a lot of plastic surgeons, there's some that are awesome, and there's some that aren't. It just depends on their passion and their education.
I think what you're explaining, and for a lot of people, nurses will know this, people practicing in the industry, there are cosmetic surgeons that are performing implant surgeries, is what you're saying.
Yes.
They're performing fat transfers. They're performing neck lifts and tummy tucks. And that is the wild, wild west, and can be.
Yes.
Right?
Definitely.
So I totally get where you're going with that, and I agree, which may be why the CAN certification is held so tightly.
I think.
And thank you for exposing that, because that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have thought of it quite like that.
Yeah.
So with talking about scope of practice, which I love to do, what are you seeing right now when you walk into a chain med spa? And chain med spas are spas that you will see like in a shopping mall. Sometimes they have multiple locations. Usually you don't have a physician working on staff. Usually it's a telemed or a nurse practitioner that's doing a good faith exam. Can you explain a little bit about, because I know you want to get there, about your worries about patient safety, because safety is a big thing for you?
That's a good point there. And even in the chain, we have corporate that are now owning some of the chains. And then we have like single owners that are owning a lot of the, I don't know if it's really a chain, but they have multiple locations. And I think because money's the driver for a lot of those organizations, it's not necessarily having quality and having training and being safe, because the drive is all about the money. Mm-hmm. And I see it because I go into those places and train in them, and I've trained in a lot of them. And they'll take beginner injectors, and we're trying to train them in a day, and they've had a few other trainings, and it's just not, it takes a long time to become a good injector. I'd say it takes at least 5 years to be somewhat competent, to really know how to do assessments, how to be safe, where to put the product, and be effective at doing your neuromodulators. It's every once in a while you run into someone who's good, but it just takes time.
It takes time.
Over and over and over. And bringing up that point about the chains, something that I'm seeing a lot of now, apart from the chains, is that these girls, mainly girls, sometimes men, will go get a job at one of the chains, get a lot of experience, and then they go start their own little med spa at like Sola or those little places that you can. And that is a really big concern, because now they're by themselves and there's no accountability. And hopefully that they're continuing their education and learning. But I see a lot of that right now, where they just go off and, and start their own business. And it's like, we need something to bring everyone together so that we're continually staying safe. I mean, I'm fortunate because Galderma sends me to trainings. I go to trainings. I learn every time I even inject or train a new injector. I learn something from them. We're always learning, and you have to keep learning and growing and being safe. And things change, and it's important because there's a lot of autonomy out there in these little they start from these places that are kind of the chains, and then they go do their own thing, and then you're like, okay, I hope they're being safe, and
And the novice nurse, truly, which is what we're dealing with, which is, I believe, if I remember correctly, is under 5 years of experience is considered the novice nurse. So you're having truly just a brand new nurse come out and try to get into aesthetics, which is, I think, it can be appropriate. There is a place for it, but is it really smart? So where I'm going with this, and we're going with safety right now, and you're talking about being by yourself, and this is one of the things I worry about in my med spa, is you can't let yourself be isolated.
Nah.
Because if you get we call this a vascular occlusion. This is where we lose blood supply from an injection source. It can happen immediately, instantaneously, or it can happen over time. Your practice stops. You stop the practice for that day, and you are focused on that situation, and you're trying to correct it. And it's helpful when you can pick up the phone
Yeah,
and have 2 or 3 resources coming in to help you.
absolutely.
Because blindness is another outcome of injectables, vascular occlusions,
Which leads
stroke
necrosis
of the skin.
so that's something that's
So people that have you, and I'm going to let you share it, you've experienced that personally, a vascular
it
occlusion.
happened on me. Someone gave me a vascular occlusion with a product, and I've been doing this for 25 years, and I went to work. I had someone do a little touch up in my lip, and I looked in the mirror that night, and I go, "Gosh, I look a little dark around there." But I was just, I don't want to hate to admit this, but I've never had one. I haven't done it on anybody where that has happened, and so I thought I'm just really bruised because I take aspirin. I get to work, and the 2 PAs were like, "What happened to your face?" And my limbs were literally like dusky, dark, upper and lower. And the long story of that is that it was a very small amount of product, probably put in the wrong place, and it took 15 cc's of Hylenex, which if you guys know that's a lot of Hylenex.
Mhm.
If you can even find that much, sometimes it's hard.
If you can find that much.
And 3 days to dissolve it. It was only 0.25 of a hyaluronic acid filler.
And you're saying right now that you were at work with your cronies, all you guys were together, in a plastic surgeon's office, and it took 3 days. 6
And
heat. Did you take nitro paste? You have to have an emergency kit of these things. And most people, including myself, only keep about 6 cc's at a time of this dissolving mechanism of Hylenex, because not only that is it expensive, it also expires.
And then you waste your money on it. It's kind of an expensive insurance to have in your...
So that's where a community helps.
Very helpful.
You could pick up the phone and say, 911, we have an issue. Can we come pick up some Hylenex?
And we did. We actually had, I had some of the top, Dr. Yolen, who everybody knows. Can we name names?
Yeah, I shout out to Yolen.
He's like, I think everyone, I will do a shout out to Dr. Yolen because he is one of the most amazing human beings in this industry. He's just the kindest, sweetest soul that will help everyone.
Mentorship. He's really a mentor.
He is just an awesome person, and he helped, and some other big names in the industry. I had Lori Robertson and Nancy Pellegrino were on the phone with me, helping me, and it was just, I was so glad I didn't do it to somebody else, because when you talk about a BO, when you're the person doing it, I had someone one time have a pressure occlusion, which is when the product swells and then it puts pressure on the artery, like in the lip, and it's just, you can't sleep. If something goes wrong, it's just, your life stops, like you said, until that patient is okay. It just, everything stops. Your personal life, your work life, until everything is okay with that patient. It just is, and it should be that way. You shouldn't have the attitude, oh, that happens. I've heard people say at other offices that they just expect BOs to happen. And I'm like, I couldn't live like that. Like I know. They do happen.
They do happen.
They do happen. And if you inject a lot, everyone says it's going to happen at some point. But I'm just do everything in my power to not let it happen, because I can't live with that.
No.
I live safe and comfortable.
Yes.
I sleep at night.
And I think that's where experience really can keep you safe. Experience keeps you safe, right? And I see that in what you're saying and how you practice this, and you're very safe about it, and you have resources to counteract and mitigate damage. And that is key. So here's winding back a little bit about to education. I kind of thought a lot about these new nurses, and do you think there's value in doing a cadaver class and taking a cadaver class prior to working in the field, or what's your thoughts?
I went to my first cadaver class probably about, 8 or 9 years ago when they offered it. I had no idea. And I've probably been to about 5 now since I've done that. And the first time I went, I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done this a long time ago. Only because we inject in the cadaver head, the face, and then we dissect it and they color code everything and we see where products end up. Now, a cadaver is not like a live face that has, that's squishy. It has, but it's very, it gives you a respect for anatomy like I never had before. And I thought, I can't believe I've never had a problem all these years. And I think cadaver classes are important. And I think anatomy and education is really, really important too. I don't think that you have to necessarily, if you're an RN, have to be a NP or a PA, because I see a lot of RNs that are really good. I see, it doesn't matter that type of education, but continuing education, doing cadaver classes, doing anatomy, like just learning all the time is really important. There's so many resources out there to learn.
I feel personally that a cadaver class is a game changer.
Yeah.
I really think it humbles you when you want to go out there and shoot your guns a-blazing. After nursing school, you're going out there shooting people's faces up. You may slow down a bit and have a little bit of respect for the area you're diving into.
So, in fact, Jerry, I've been injecting for 25 years, and that's why I'm coming to you to learn PRF. Because I continually get more and more respect for the face, and I just, and I love fillers, I love Sculptra, I love it all. Not all of it. There's a couple that I don't. I love hyaluronic acids that you can dissolve.
Yes. What do you love? How about that?
I love all the hyaluronic acids that you can dissolve that are not Vicross technology. And I don't have to get into any names, but people will know that only because of bad things that I have seen out. And I am not just like in my little office. I am literally out there in hundreds of offices all the time, seeing what's going on. And products you can't dissolve, I don't like. Sculptra is a biostimulator. It's not like people think it's permanent. You can't get rid of it. It literally builds a matrix for your own collagen to grow a little bit faster than what PRF or PRP does. But and now I just want to jump in and dive into PRF and PRP because I think it's amazing. Just what we've done. The couple of days I have with you, I'm like, I love this stuff. It's so good.
It's amazing.
And people want natural. If the people that come to me because I don't look done, I don't look overdone, and that's a whole that could be a whole other podcast.
Yeah,
in and of itself, of just the overdone look, and I think that's my reputation. People come to me because they want something natural. They don't want to look like they're done. And when I train these people out there, I tell them, if you can tell that someone's had stuff done, then I consider that not a good job. It should look natural. But there are communities, some people want to look done. There's a group of younger women that want to look done. Some of the other...
We're calling it kind of there's actually a doctor that wrote a paper, I believe, on the alien. He named it something with the word alien. And I will try to look that up and have that posted on the bottom of the podcast so you guys can look that up. But it is a look. And most people are trying to move away from that. Yes. Sculptra. Let's your love. So a little bit about Suzanne. She is known on Instagram and other places as the face sculptress. And take me back, because I know this about you.
Yeah.
But take us way back to the early days of Sculptra with the AIDS campaign.
Yes. So I got introduced to Sculptra from two plastic surgeons they're in Newport now, and they're like, Suzanne, you need to do this. And I was like, oh, gosh, because it just seemed like a very invasive injection. And it was right when Sculptra got approved for aesthetics, because originally Sculptra was approved for HIV, for lipoatrophy. And so it got, I think it was about 16 years ago for aesthetic, but I think it's been approved for HIV for about 20 years. And so they made me do it. I had my training, and every time someone came in and wanted Sculptra, I'm like, do you really want it? We can do something else. And so I started doing it, and I fell in love with it because it's such a natural outcome. And
Suzanne, this was 20 years ago, right, that you started injecting it?
Doing about 16 years ago.
Okay.
Because it was only approved for for aesthetic purposes about 50. It was right when in Santa Fe had the product. That's where it started. It started at Santa Fe. So that's who, it was a rep, and she's actually a really good friend of mine today who sold Sculptra. She came in the office, and or I was going to say the names of the two plastics are like, you need to talk to her, start doing Sculptra. And I really had a lot of resistance. And then I started doing it, went to trainings, and I go, okay, this stuff is really good. And then I started seeing that I felt like it was really safe. It's a very safe product. It's hard to have a vascular occlusion with Sculptra. And then it just kept growing back when Sculptra wasn't popular, because now it's blown up all over social media, and that's a whole nother topic I can talk about. But I was doing Sculptra when no one wanted it, and people were calling it all kinds of names. It looks like cement, it's this, it's that. And strictly, it's a strict biostimulator that grows your own collagen. And you can use it. Actually, we do it. I do it all over the body for people now. So it's really...
A lot of people in the old Sculptra days, including myself, there was a lot of, because it was new, there was a lot of nodules that came out of it. And do you think that was injector placement?
Both. I think it's injector error. I think nodules are injector error most of the time. Sometimes the areas that a little bit of problem is when someone's had a facelift in the preauricular area, because of the SMAs and the sutures, the permanent sutures. That's where people will tend to get a little, I call them collagen balls, because that's what a nodule is. It's a little ball of collagen. But it's primarily, I think, injector error.
So, Suzanne, I'd love to have you back, and we could just do a podcast on Sculptra, because there's really so much to talk about with that. It's pretty fascinating.
Yes.
And it's long overdue. It needed its shout out. So I'm going to have you back on for that.
Yes, I would love it.
Awesome. So one question I have for you, another one when it comes to injecting. Do you aspirate or do you not aspirate?
I do in certain places, like where I always aspirate paraforamen aperture on the chin. With Sculptra, it's just, I aspirate everywhere because it's easy to aspirate the way you hold the needle, and because it's water and you really get a true aspiration when you're using water. You know, with filler, there's a lot of controversy over aspirating.
There is.
There is. When I go to trainings, in fact, all the products that get FDA approved, they did not aspirate to get FDA approved. And I bring that up at trainings. I'm like, this aspiration thing but I would never tell anyone not to aspirate.
In training, when you train, you teach aspiration, right?
In fact, they want to, everybody wants to.
It's interesting because aspiration, to me, it's really works. I think it's in the right hands. You move, even though aspirating is, for the people that don't know, is when you inject a needle into the skin and you pull back on the plunger and you're trying to see if you have blood come back. And if you do, you're in a vessel and you're taught to remove the needle and start over. My kind of thought process, and you can tell me how you feel, is you're injecting in a vessel all the time. You just don't even know you are. But there's some value in aspiration. I aspirate. Maybe it's just because we're all old school and we aspirate. I know there's a new thought process on that. So,
well, it depends. If you're doing a bolus down on periosteum, and I was taught this by the two plastic surgeons that made me do Sculptra, which I'm so grateful for. But if you're on bone, theoretically, there should not be any artery. And that's why we know anatomy. We know generally where the arteries are. And a lot of people don't know this, but 33% of the population has an aberrant angular artery that goes across this way. And I have seen people aspirate and get blood doing an injection here. But if you're down on periosteum, there should not be an artery laying on that bone. I think when people get it, it's because they've gone through the artery and they're drawing up the blood because they've broken the blood vessel. But gosh,
I know.
It is a tough thing. And so when I do mid-face, I don't aspirate when I'm on bone. But if I'm anywhere else, I do.
In the court of law, if you ever had to be put on the stand, this is to new nurses, if you ever caused a vascular occlusion, and unfortunately something horrible happened to somebody, which doesn't happen often. I don't want to scare everybody. But if it does, what do you say when you're on the stand and they ask you, did you aspirate or did you not aspirate?
I don't think that would be brought up because it's not in the FDA approval of the product. Now, you could have other people in the industry say something different, But that's why I would never tell anyone not to aspirate. So it's going to be an ongoing conversation for a long time. If you are moving your needle, like let's say you're doing lip filler and you're moving it, it's really hard to cause an occlusion if that needle's moving. If you're moving through a vessel, you're going to break it and you could get a bruise. But to literally, unless you're like got lucky and just injected it the whole way in the vessel, I just don't think that it's possible.
So the word on the street is this argument is made by the top plastic surgeons in the industry to aspirate or not to aspirate. And we could go on and on. Everybody has their different thought process. But I just thought I'd ask you what your thought was.
But one thing to remember, that an aspiration is not a guarantee that you're going to not get an occlusion. It's very important to know that I think in what you said about when you aspirate, and if you are not holding that needle so still,
like a surgeon
cannot do that. They do not have the
dexterity
to hold that really still. So I see it all day long. And I watch it and I'm like, okay, you just you just messed up your aspiration because it's not, So I think products get approved for certain areas of the face where there aren't major arteries, but we know that anatomy is different on everybody. But that's why products get approved in certain areas on certain planes because of the safety of it.
I love it. I'm glad you shared that portion about clinical trials.
Yes.
So that's fascinating to know. So I have another couple questions for you here. Let me look at my handy dandy list here. Okay. So I have a loaded question. You're going to have to think outside of yourself for this one. Okay. Do you think injecting filler is in the scope of practice for a nurse?
Well, it is considered a device. So, I don't know. That's a tricky question because we've accepted it to be okay, but all fillers, I don't know about Sculptra, but all fillers are considered device in the pharmaceutical world. So, if you look at them, they're devices. So,
which, explain to everyone, which means
what could be an implant, a breast implant,
and nurses are not.
Yeah, nurses don't
use devices, although we do use lasers.
Yes,
through protocol.
And you can hurt someone with a laser more than you could hurt them with a filler. But I think that's why it's really important to work under a physician. Because if a physician is watching you, because if a nurse is in the OR and there's like an RNFA, who's someone who actually closes in surgery, like they'll do the closing sutures around a surgery. They're doing that because there's a physician in that room. They legally have to work under a physician to do that. So I think that's why having a doctor to work under is important. But that's a tough question because it is a device. So, but that's why it's important, I think, to work under someone that knows what they're doing. I've, some doctors, I don't know what I was going to say, but I'm like, oh, how I just say that? But even the plastics that I've worked for, I inject and do so much more than they've ever done. And they probably wouldn't know what to do. They know surgery. They don't know. Like with my VO that I had in my lip, they're like, okay, call Yolan. Call a doctor that knows what to do because a plastic surgeon, they know when there's a problem, when it looks bad, but they don't know how to take care of it.
So as a nurse, and speaking to the new nurses that are getting in this field, you have an obligation to surround yourself with support, education, and continually furthering your education and being humble.
Yes.
Don't go crazy out there. Because you're given a little bit of a gift by being able to use this device, as we call it. And the United States has decided that it's okay for a nurse, an associate's degree, RN, to go out and inject. And even an NP, whoever they are, they're allowing this. So I'm just, my hope is with the podcast and us talking that will encourage the young new nurses to really know what their field they're going into and to have a little bit of be humble about it.
Right. I'd like to see, well, in some states, I think Florida, you have to be mid-level to inject. An RN can inject. So
Okay.
It has to be a mid-level like NP or PA. What I'd like to see first is that they have them wipe out estheticians injecting, only because they don't have, I mean, although, because I know some estheticians that inject, they've been injecting forever in Colorado that I met, and they're probably better than some of the nurses that inject. But I think as a standard,
They have no medical training.
they have no medical training, how to deal when someone passes out, just
Assessment.
all that stuff. That's important. But I think that also for people that are getting this done, they need to be educated on who to go to, and not your social media wonder that has 1 million followers. Because we need to do a podcast just about that. Because
the re-education you have to take place in your practice on patients, right?
you have to tell people that, and I have people that will come in that I don't know that are new to me, and they'll show me something on Instagram, and I'm like, that's not going to happen. And it kind of is insulting because you can have 1 million followers on Instagram and not be a good injector, but yet everyone will respect you because you have 1 million followers and you're not educated. And it's kind of something that, it needs to be
The wild, wild west, my friend.
Yeah. Yes.
The wild, wild
The
west.
Wild West. For sure.
So I'm going to bring it home to a time in this industry and of COVID. And plastic surgeries and plastic surgeons, cosmetic doctors, med spas. I talked about this in my last podcast. Estheticians and spa owners in general that even did facials and hairdressers were all really affected by this time. And tell me a little bit about what happened to you. How long did you have to step down out of work? And
Well, thankfully, the doctor that I had been working for, we were shut down for 2 months, but then he brought us back right away. He's like, okay, this is kind of like ridiculous. We tried to do what they wanted us to do as far as having plastic barriers and wearing masks and all that stuff. But then he thankfully just let us go back to work. But there were a lot of people that
did
for a
not.
long time. And I know one particular doctor that just only did virtual consults, and they shut down their entire med spa for a long time, like 6 months, and it hurt them. It hurt their business desperately.
Yeah.
So-
A lot of people left the industry.
Yeah.
And that's what's sad is it changed it, but it also was the busiest time financially.
Oh, I did more lips during COVID because everyone could put a mask on. And it was so funny. All the older ladies. Oh, once it was like and Kiss, by the way, Kiss got launched during COVID. Kiss
Kiss is a Restylane product.
Kiss got, and I was cracking up. I'm like, everyone wanted their lips done, so I was just Kiss lips
all day. And Botox, everyone wanted cosmetic services. And
you get a text. Are you doing it outside? Can you come here do that?
it was the Wild West.
It was the Wild West. Yeah.
But you stayed in.
Yes.
And you happened to have your people that helped you through. You had a champion, it sounds like a plastic surgeon that kind of was like, you guys are trained in protection. You deal with people in the hospital, we deal with patients with airborne diseases at all times, infections. And we're trained in that protection mechanism. So shout out to that. I'm glad to hear that
I
happened.
Continued to fly and travel, and I was flying to Colorado, and I was out, and Colorado wasn't closed down like we were here. So I'd get off the plane, and it was like, they're all, come on in. So it was just the Wild West for sure. But it was pretty much here in Southern California, because I'd go other places, and even in Northern California, it wasn't like how it was here. We got hit hard.
Yeah, we got hit hard in California. So it appears that your journey's been long, and it appears that you're transitioning a bit.
Yes.
You got your foot in another state, and you're going to kind of work both places.
I am. I'm working both places, and I also train, and I have a passion for training. new injectors, especially ones that I see talent and I see potential to learn. And I'm actually mentoring one right now that I love because we need good injectors. I'm going to retire someday. I don't know when, but it's a lot. I work.
You want to leave a legacy.
I do.
Girls, there's so many nurses out there that want to train you, mentor you, that have all this experience, that a weekend course or a 2-week course that you take for a lot of money. There's a lot of these people charging a lot of money to you guys.
Yes, and it's not, I think it's really unethical to charge a new person that's trying to start a business. They have to pay $5,000 for a training that's
$15,000 is what I'm hearing now.
It's not going to get them hired somewhere.
Yeah.
You're going to pay $15,000 and then you go apply at a plastic surgeon's office or somewhere, and they're not going to hire you. We want to see you. How many have you injected?
Yeah.
How long or what have you done?
So I know we haven't answered a lot of the questions people probably have, but this is an ongoing topic of how we're going to try to help the new industry and the newbies coming up into it. And I think you've started off right with mentorship. I know I love doing that myself, and it's giving back and helping. You're giving your secret sauce away, and that's worth something.
I'm not afraid to share it because I don't feel threat. I want people, just like Dr. Yolen. That's the thing about him. He gives and gives and gives, and he's not afraid someone's going to take him over because we're all individuals. We all have our own gifts, how we inject. We're all a little bit different. You could line us all up and we'd all do things a little bit different, but the important things need to be shared and they need to be passed on.
Absolutely. 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 So thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you here. And she's going to come back because we're going to talk everything Sculptra.
Yeah.
Because Sculptra's the new hot topic. It's a biostimulator, and she's coming back for that. So thank you all for joining us. And to the new RNs, we are here to take you open arms. There's so many people in the industry. And as you follow this Injector Spotlight series, you will meet so many of them that just have so much knowledge and information to give you and to make you aware of what you're taking on and have respect for it. And we hope your journey is as successful as hers has been. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.